acá estoy. ¿Me escuchan bien? Perfecto. Sí. ¿En cuánto tiempo será la conexión? En 5 minutos empezamos. Ok, perfecto. Gracias.
Colleagues, the Secretariat informs me that we have quorum. So I invite delegates to please take their seats. Recall, ladies and gentlemen, we've begun item 4 on our agenda, titled Rule of Law and Good Governance in the Americas, a Stronger Role for the Private Sector. We've heard from 2 panelists on this subject. Tara Chuck, Director of the Peter Bell Rule of Law Program of the Inter-American Dialogue, and also former Senator of Chile and Minister of Justice and Human Rights, Aran Larraín. Now we are passing to the third and final panelist, who is Mr. Oscar Caipo. Mr. Caipo serves as Director for Latin America at the MACE Group, is Chair of the Board of Perú Sostenible, and former President of the Confederación Nacional de Instituciones Empresariales Privadas of Peru. Mr. Caipo, welcome. I hope our connection is good now. The OAS Permanent Council welcomes you, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, President, and all ambassadors and country representatives attending. Thank you for the invitation and this opportunity to share the perspective from a private sector and our role in promoting integrity and institutionality. Though I will speak from my country experience in Peru, I believe that this could be extrapolated to other countries that have similar socioeconomic and political characteristics, as we have heard from former Senator Larraín from Chile. I wanted to start putting in context the reason why from the private sector in Peru and from all the different actors, we need to have this conversation. In Peru in particular, despite the economic growth that we had in the last 30 years, generating record resources, all economic indicator, average poverty decrease, and all other positive results, Unfortunately, we have a disparity in development among the 25 regions that conform our Peru territory, with, for example, the Amazon regions, which are six, being the most relegated and with the highest social gaps. I'll give you one example that is critical for us to understand our situation in Peru. The average of students about to enter high school, no, this is 3 or 4 years before ending school, with satisfactory results in reading and mathematics is only 8%. This is the average national performance in math and reading. With the best results or in the regions have less than 20%. This is one of five students that go to school. And in Amazon regions like Loreto, it's just one of 100. This is terrible because this is our human capital. This is the development of the people that are going to come to the workforce, to become citizens, to become voters, to live the life that they deserve. If we don't address the effect of the lack of health system, no access to quality water, pervasive childhood anemia levels that are higher than 40% over the last decades, not allowing child to develop to their full potential. This is a terrible reality that has another effect: very low productivity workforce and almost 3 times less productivity measures in people hours than our neighbor countries, Chile and Colombia. And this has an additional effect. Given that we live open economies, this is pressing prices, thus uh, average income down, closing the vicious cycle of poverty. So we need to stop this and start getting into a virtuous cycle. How can we grow, have enough resources, and at the same time generate these human development levels? We believe there is four structural problems that need to be addressed. Ineffective decentralization with lack of capacity and meritocracy in the public sector, mainly. Corruption at different levels, either large projects or also in small business day-to-day inspections or transactions or permits. Informality at 70% of the workforce, caused mainly because of the level of bureaucracy and corruption, as I have pointed out. And last but not least, and should be one of the most important topics that hopefully you are going to discuss in your agendas, if you permit me to say that, is illegality. This is representing $12 billion economy per year in Peru, being the largest sector of Peru as a whole, the illegal economies, even larger than formal legal mining, with illegal mining accounting for more than half of those 20 billion, and illegal mining being even bigger than our legal mining activity in Peru. And this is basically what it really becomes concerning, is that it's given employment to around 10% of the voting and working population. No? So this is something that we need to address. In the Amazon, illegal activities and organized crime are the best employer and highest paying employer. As a result, our institutionality is weakening very fast as illegality and informality is penetrating politics, justice, and security systems. In the past, we as private sector focused on investment, fulfilling consumer needs, providing employment, paying taxes, and doing social responsibility in our communities. That is clearly not enough. That is why we are now more active and engaged with initiatives to promote integrity and institutionality in our country. Some actions we are developing as we speak is promoting integrity in our companies and in our value chains to make sure that we lead by example. Understanding the illegal activities value chains to design initiatives to contain its growth and development. And it's a decision from the private sector to do so, despite this means losing business. political advocacy to allow private sector financing back into politics. I know that this is a or we stop financing legal activities, financing that, and that's very dangerous because of the representation that that creates. Doing alliances with civil society organizations to deploy tools to help political parties filter candidates and also the voters to filter and do more informed voting, and developing recommendations for political parties to better control illegal financing. How we're going to measure success? In 2026, we will have national Congress and regional elections. We expect that the results will bring government that comes to serve the people and not themselves. In the case of the Congress, if we elect 10 additional good Congress, this is honest people, that's less 10 bad people, we're going to be starting change the balance of power between good and bad in Peru and start rebuilding institutionality. If population improves trust levels in democracy and institutions, public and private, we're going to be a step forward and changing the course of our country. We truly believe that integrity builds trust and trust strengthens democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caipo, for that presentation and your insights from the private sector in particular. This issue is a sensitive and complicated one, and it affects, I think, many of our countries, and it certainly affects my own, and we've grappled with political financing through laws and regulations over the years, and I'm not sure that we have it perfect yet. So I think an exchange and our views on the subject can help enrich us all in terms of the best way forward and ways that would be adapted to our particular realities in different parts of the continent. So without further ado, the floor is now open to any delegations who may wish to intervene on this subject. Chile, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And we appreciate your including this on the agenda for today. And we would like to commend the former Minister of Chile, Minister Larraín. Chair, it's evident that the relationship between money and politics, especially when we talk about electoral campaign financing, has a direct impact on the credibility and of by the community of the electoral process and elected officials. There's no doubt that this has a direct impact on the stability of institutions and as a result on the quality of our democracies. Article 5 of the Inter-American Charter puts or states, quote, needs to be special attention paid to the high costs of election campaigns. There should be a transparent and balanced elections funding and financing mechanisms, just as the report reflects money and politics. There needs to be a strengthening of transparency in Latin America and the Caribbean. So the flows challenge many areas of legitimacy, and that's why we need to apply the most stringent traceability as well as accountability in funding at the campaign level so that people who are elected officials to respond to the financial flows that were committed erode our democratic institutions. And as the report indicates, these are serious enough, but they become even more intense when they come from organized criminal groups. So understanding the relevance of that situation, Chile, during its chair in the Inter-American Charter on Democracy, there was a report and a dialogue on transparency that included Canada, Paraguay, Uruguay, the United States. And during this workshop, it was a broad dialogue on the challenges and campaign funding, highlighting the importance of fostering transparency, equity, and accountability in the political systems. In that regard, emphasis was placed on the need to strengthen the rule of law, ensuring the independence of oversight institutions, and strengthening the education of the voters in this area. When we look at political elections financing, we know that the lack of transparency, funding sources, as well as inconsistent relations and regulatory processes between local and national institutions are issues. Sir, understanding that these exert pressures to a greater or lesser extent in every nation, we assert our belief that the appropriate path is the determined and firm focus on honesty, transparency, to make sure that it's cross-cutting without any political affiliations to take into account. This needs to be an active part of the process, working with the citizenry in each one of our countries. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chile. Thank you, Chair. The DR delegation would like to also show its appreciation in including this item in our agenda today. We also thank the comments made by our panelists and recognize Canada's permanent commitment to strengthening the rule of law as well as governance in our region. In that regard, we would also like to highlight the valuable efforts undertaken by the voluntary follow-up group to the Inter-American Democratic Charter, which has been a fundamental forum in order to foster open and constructive dialogue between the member states relating to the challenges that we face in promoting and consolidating our democracies. We also commend the efforts of the group in promoting discussion on the role that could and should be undertaken by the private sector in institutional strengthening efforts, in particular in those related to the efforts against illicit campaign funding. This is a crucial issue for the integrity of our democratic systems and confidence by citizens in the elections processes. So in that framework, we would like to highlight the relevance of the next 10th Summit of the Americas under the slogan, Building a Sure, Sustainable, Safe, and Shared Prosperity Hemisphere. This will be an opportunity in order to launch effective cooperation between governments, the private sector, civil society, and multilateral organizations. Our country is assigning high value to the role of the business community in promoting democratic governance. Throughout the last few years, this sector in the Dominican Republic has actively been involved in various national initiatives aimed at promoting transparency, accountability, and the ethical use of resources and elections processes. This commitment is closely aligned with the principles promoted in the Inter-American Democratic Charter and reinforces the shared values within the organization. So we, again, based on all this, we encourage the member states to maintain a continuity and support to the voluntary groups' efforts and to continue to promote spaces of dialogue and cooperation among the public, private sectors, and civil society that will in turn allow us to consolidate more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable democracies. We reiterate our firm commitment with the democratic values of our region and our willingness to continue supporting actively efforts in this collective endeavor. Thank you. I thank the Dominican Republic, El Salvador. Thank you, Chair. We also would like to express our appreciation to the Canadian delegation as well as the voluntary group with the follow-up of the Democratic Charter as well as the interventions already made earlier. As has already been pointed out, beyond the references to Article 5 of the Democratic Charter relating to transparency in campaign funding, we cannot underestimate the significant role played by the private sector. The Charter on business community, we recognize the need to promote and strengthen the business community in their efforts to contribute to the sustainable, comprehensive, and economic stability of the region, to multidimensional security, strengthening democracy, and promoting and protecting human rights. We agree that in order to strengthen democracy and governance, we need to have sound institutions and elections processes that are reliable, that generate confidence among the public. And as a result, we need to promote transparency and respect for the law in these engagements. The processes in El Salvador under sound rules and procedures enshrined in the Constitution that establishes the principal rights in elections. The elections code that includes penalties as well as political advertisements, and the role of public and private sector entities. In this area, the legislation on political parties, together with the elections code, creates a framework of transparency that prohibits any hidden campaign sources and eliminates public funding to political parties. These need to be funded through the legal channels. The digital currency issuance includes traceability, accountability in the private sector. The National Committee on Digital Assets launches a regulatory framework that makes it more difficult to use digital currency, especially for elections processes. That way, the law strengthens transparency and contributes to the integrity of the policies. And new technology constitute institutional challenges in order to improve auditing and strengthening digital funding standards. These challenges are efforts to ensure that our elections institutions continue to respond with efficiency, independence, and transparency. Chair, in the context of this analysis, we also believe that it's important to remember that in Article 12 of the Democratic Charter, as part of the commitments by member states, high emphasis is made on maintaining macroeconomic balances and strengthening democracy. So the document recognizes that democratic governance is strengthened when we create the conditions conducive to include the business community. Strengthening the rule of law and governance requires a strategic partnership with the private sector that is based on clearly defined rules and procedures that are predictable, as well as challenges that promote transparency, traceability, and accountability. We need to have modern and applicable frameworks managed by effective institutions that include the business community, that become social and active partners in creating and building confidence and respect for the law. The country believes that it's important to undertake reforms and initiatives in order to improve business climate, institutional transparency with vis-a-vis the private sector through the national strategy in facilitating business community efforts 2023-2024, facilitating trade, and the action plan to facilitate trade for 2025. We know that we have seen efforts at modernizing with legislation on investments and electronic signing innovations. El Salvador continues to promote policies that integrate the private sector, making sure that with each advance we move forward in transparency and co-responsibility for all of the sectors in the building of the new El Salvador. Thank you very much. I thank El Salvador. Thank you, Chair. Brazil also values this opportunity to discuss this very relevant issue, and we also commend the efforts that have led to this discussion. The efforts toward democratization requires spaces for convergence, where we can have dialogue and we can move forward in our efforts to commit to the enshrined principles in the OAS Charter. We agree that the absence of clearly defined rules on campaign financing by political parties can distort the functions of democratic processes and erode the confidence in democracy, especially because of the risk of the capture of economic power by political forces and pressures exerted by certain groups. Over the last few years, Brazil has gone through a process of strengthening its democratic institutions that include reflections on the elections processes. Today, we have, with a solid institutional framework that seeks to improve equal opportunities and transparency. So with the predominance of public policies aimed at campaign financing, they are complemented by contributions of staff with, we considered unconstitutional by the federal Supreme Court in 2015, where that had been prohibited. So we have advanced significantly in the traceability of elections resources. In addition to that, Brazilian legislation establishes the to focus on oversight mechanisms in order to preserve the transparency. Every process in collecting elections funds is submitted to a very rigorous evaluation and accountability process. And almost in real time in electronic systems that are easily accessed to assure transparency and participation by civil society in the elections oversight. The elections accounts are reviewed by the elections officials that can lead to fines or declared ineligible in case of election irregularities. Outside of the elections framework, we also look at the political systems and its financial flows to combat corruption in a much more comprehensive way. That includes the anti-corruption legislation of 2013. Brazil has made progress in its efforts to regulate the lobbies and their operations and impact in affecting public institutions. We also have a bill that regulates the practices on lobbies with governmental institutions. Chair, at the same time, when we talk about the relationship between the private sector and democracy, we cannot refrain from mentioning the role of the major digital platforms. Throughout the last few years, we have seen firsthand the negative influence of disinformation in elections disputes, particularly in the context of the expansion of the use of AI in a lucrative model for major businesses, and which is detrimental to democratic dialogue and discussions and the integration of information in digital environments. We need to expand the discussions on this topic in order to ensure a broad freedom of expression and at the same time ensure that those key stakeholders in the public debate, that includes the media, social media, also have a responsibility regarding the preservation of the rule of law and respect of the integrity of information. Brazil understands that strengthening the rule of law in the Americas requires maintaining the integrity of the democratic processes in our combat against disinformation and ensuring that the resources mobilized, both public and private, are always subject to clearly defined rules and effective oversight mechanisms so that any elections dispute is undertaken in a fair and balanced manner. In that regard, we have already been moving forward and we are willing to cooperate with other member states in the organization. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brazil.
Thank you.
Señores representantes permanentes, delegados, distinguidos invitados, panelistas, buenas tardes.
Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone here, we are brought together here today by fundamental objection for the integrity of our democracies, the way in which our political and electoral processes are financed. We appreciate the call for this space made by the delegation of Canada, and we highly value the analysis of the invited panelists who have enriched today's session. Political financing is not a minor issue. It is an essential component to ensure fair elections, plurality of voices, and citizen confidence in institutions. Its effective regulation is essential to prevent corruption, avoid the capture of private interest, and promote transparency in political competition. In our country, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal plays a key role as an independent entity in the supervision of electoral financing. The Costa Rican model is based on two fundamental pillars. First, a system of partial public financing that seeks to reduce dependence on private funds and level access to political competition. And second, a strict regulation of private financing with defined limits, public reporting obligations, and effective audit and accountability mechanisms. The existing institutional mechanisms in Costa Rica are robust, independent, and guarantee respect for due process at all times. This makes it possible to address possible questions with seriousness and transparency without weakening confidence in democratic institutions or in the authorities. Mr. Chairman, as you quite well said, the challenges in this matter are not alien to any democracy, no matter how solid it is. But it is precisely in these moments when the ability of our institutions to act with independence, legality, and ethical commitment is put to the test. Costa Rica reiterates its commitment to the principles of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, in particular with regard to the strengthening of political parties, accountability, and the promotion of a culture of legality and transparency. We trust that this forum, as well as the voluntary follow-up group for the Inter-American Democratic Charter, will continue to be a space to share good practices and also to recognize challenges and build collective solutions in defense of democracy and its institutions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Costa Rica. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We are very grateful for the presentation from Mrs. Karasip, Mr. Laren, and Mr. Kaipo on this critically important issue. Canada has asked for this item to be on this agenda in as much as it's something that involves everybody, given the current reality of democracy's erosion in the region. This discussion in the Permanent Council represents an opportunity to change things based on best practices with the private sector and financing in the Americas with common guidelines. It's quite clear that the ability to finance cannot, I should say that the private sector has great interest in promoting rule of law, legitimacy, and transparency in English.
As well as engagement from the private sector are crucial to drive reforms to reinforce electoral systems throughout the Americas. A strong political financing framework is essential to building and maintaining trust in democratic institutions and elections. In Canada, while the voting process has not changed much over the years, the political financing regime has significantly evolved in response to the changing campaign practices and recognition of the need to improve accountability and protect fundamental freedoms such as the freedom of expression. We recognize that there's no one-size-fits-all model. Conversations like this allow us to learn from one another as we work to strengthen our political financing systems. No democracy is perfect, but democratic governance remains the system most capable of delivering what matters most to citizens: peace and security, sustainable development, a social safety net, and respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. In democracies, people have agency and a voice in decisions that affect their lives. Defending democracy is a core priority in Canada's international engagement. We will continue to work with our partners to protect and strengthen democracy in the hemisphere. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci, le Canada.
Thank you very much, Canada. Uruguay, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Also, we should like to thank the delegation of Canada for the initiative to put before consideration of this council this very important topic. And we'd also like to thank the panelists for the Inter-American Dialogue for putting together the report that we're talking about. Of course, we share democracy, the rule of law. This is not a formal aspect. Of course, elections should be free and fair, but there are aspects that oftentimes the citizenry cannot see that clearly, such as financing political campaigns and the relationship between political life and other things. Yes, we want a strong private sector that participates in electoral processes and can freely defend its interests, but we understand that this is a crucial aspect, and that is to have the regulation of these campaigns and the contributions from the private sector. Now, as has already been said here, we don't have any final say on what has already been said here, and in looking at sake of what it does in terms of follow-up. But people have spoken about some of the shortcomings, and this is self-criticism, and there have been some complaints from our citizenry as well. We have spent a long time discussing and updating our own campaign financing laws. We had it in our legislation, but we were aware that we had to level up traceability and transparency. And there are resources in terms of how things have to be applied, and we have the electoral court in our case to follow things. And this oversight has to be up top. And in 2024, a few months ago, our parliament approved 12,992 law with an agreement from all political parties, and that is that we understand this represents a qualitative step which was waited for quite a long time. So this will allow us to shore up oversight and monitoring of our financing system. Ours is hybrid. There's public financing for political parties linked to their performance and the amount of votes they get. And this new legislation stipulates a new framework. In addition to other things, it governs private activity, accountability, and there are free spaces for media so that political parties, that doesn't affect the minorities, but can also have a space without depending on resources that are financed by citizens. This reform increases traceability of the funds, and there are institutional guarantees as well that are shored up, and it gives the body in our national constitution, the national court, to provide oversight and organize the elections. So let's just say that this is to review political parties and their accountability, and precisely down the line to apply sanctions. We know that the OAS has generated and has a host of different norms that were mentioned. There are standards there, both conventional as well as other solutions from the General Assembly and the Permanent Council. And we also understand that it's crucial to continue to share best practices so that we can shore up the standards and norms in this area. Thank you very much. Uruguay, United States has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those I haven't met yet, my name is Lee Lipton, and I am the interim permanent representative for the United States, while we eagerly await the Senate's confirmation of my good friend and colleague, Ambassador nominee Leandro Rizzuto. The United States believes in a strong and connected Western Hemisphere, one where our citizens can thrive, a region supported by democratic rules and the rule of law. Yet today, the malign influences of certain actors, particularly in Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, seek to weaken those bonds of trust and undermine our collective vision of peace and prosperity. As you know, this December, the Dominican Republic is hosting the 10th Summit of the Americas, which is a great platform for many reasons. Specifically, the CEO Summit and America's Business Dialogue were created to help business leaders work directly with government to cut red tape and make investments easier and more secure. Basically bringing our countries together economically, which is now a key focus of the United States mission to the OAS. As Secretary of State Rubio has said, governments and business can and must work together to build a better future. Neither the public nor private sectors can do that alone. We must recognize the work carried out by the voluntary group for the follow-up to the Inter-American Democratic Charter and High-Level Task Force on Rule of Law and Good Governance, including their recent recommendations on illicit campaign finance and judicial integrity. These initiatives help reinforce trust in democratic institutions and create the conditions for sustainable economic growth. In parallel to these efforts, the United States value practical public cooperation initiatives with the OAS. The upcoming 21st Competitive Exchange ACE in Belém, Brazil, will bring people together, government and academic leaders, to advance innovation and competitiveness across the hemisphere. The United States is now encouraging the OAS to go further and help turn dialogue into real economic results. At the end of the day, strong economies, strong democracies go hand in hand. People want to stay in their own countries, build their businesses, and raise their family in peace and prosperity. With that in mind, we look forward to getting to know each one of you and reinvigorate our relationships and place an additional focus on boosting our economies together. We believe the OAS is a place where business and government can tackle challenges together. We look forward to the leadership of Secretary General Ramdeen, as we believe our mission statements align. Let's all keep working on practical shared solutions that create more opportunities for absolutely everyone. And therefore, we believe OAS is perfectly positioned for such a task. After meeting many of you, I'm excited to join this group looking to make such a clear difference in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, the United States. Panama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We would like to begin by thanking the chairmanship and the Canadian mission for including this topic on the order of business today, as well as thank the panelists, Mrs. Broner, Mr. Hernan Larraín, and Mr. Oscar Caipo, for their presentations, on which we've taken due note. The role of the private sector in strengthening the rule of law and democratic governance in our Americas is crucial. It's fundamental. Private sector business is not just a motor for business growth, but also has the ability to become a strategic partner in the promotion of transparency, integrity, and social responsibility. For Panama, this partnership is key. Our country has promoted areas for public-private cooperation, which allows setting standards for compliance, self-regulation, and due diligence, particularly in areas such as prevention of illicit financing, the promotion of business sustainable practices, and the guarantee that economic activities develop within a framework of respect of the rule of law. Of the relevant initiatives in Panama, we can underscore the work of the National Commission Against Money Laundering, which worked very closely with unions and business chambers to reinforce the compliance mentality in the non-finance and finance sectors, the development of business integrity and anti-corruption in hand with industry, agriculture, and chambers of commerce, as well as the partnership in the logistic banking sector to strengthen traceability mechanisms and transparency. These efforts have contributed to very important successes, such as the recent exit of Panama from the list of jurisdictions, of high-risk jurisdictions, that is to say, in the European Union. These experiences show that when the private sector takes on an active commitment with reality, there are few opportunities for the state, and this increases trust by the citizenry. So along that vein, Mr. Chairman, we fully agree that the fight against illicit financing in electoral campaigns is not just the responsibility of public institutions and the electoral bodies, but also of private actors with which their transparency and ethics will move towards democracy. In electoral issues, Panama has made important steps in oversight and transparency. The Electoral Tribunal, through the National Director of Political Financing Oversight, has close work with the banking system to oversee the money flows in campaigns. And here we also have specific tops for expenditures in campaigns and a clear limit between public-private financing. The Panamanian normative framework has administrative sanctions and criminal sanctions as well to comply with these provisions, including in terms of responsibilities. The implementation of digital tools with public access allows citizens to look at income reports for candidates and campaigns, which underscores social oversight and accountability. Then finally, we reiterate the importance that the Permanent Council continue to provide follow-up with these discussions, recognizing the importance of an all-encompassing approach that looks at including the public and private sectors and civil society. Panama will continue to contribute very actively in the voluntary group for the follow-up on the Inter-American Democratic Charter, convinced that the rule of law is crucial for stability, prosperity, and security for all of our peoples. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Panama. Guatemala. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The delegation of Guatemala truly appreciates Canada and thanks Canada for including this topic, the governance in the America. This is really very important for the private sector to be on the agenda, and we also extend our recognition and thank the panelists. Transparency, legal sureness, good governance are essential to promote investment and economic growth, as is underscored in the report Money and Politics and the Role of the Private Sector in Strengthening Transparency, Democracy in Latin America and the Caribbean, written by the Inter-American Dialogue in cooperation with experts from the region. In Guatemala, the fight against corruption and public-private partnerships are critical in the national agenda. We have had practices for prevention and mechanisms for multi-sectoral participation. We underscore the work done by the National Council Against Corruption, which is made up of public sector to modernize public areas, digital sectors, and to strengthen contracting and bidding. We also have approved the law of competency and the other laws promoted by President Arevalo against money laundering and other assets financing terrorism. These laws aim to modernize the criminal aspects, and it responds to recommendations made by the Financial Latin American Action Group, GAFILAC. This is made and done to modernize the system, up traceability, and make our standards in line with international efforts. These reflects tangible results. According to Transparency International, Guatemala improved in 2024. They improved its qualification in the Index of Perception of Corruption, moving up 8 points in the global ranking. And Fitch Rating also had the credit qualification. We went from stable to positive, and this is a vote of confidence for Guatemala for economic policies and governance in the country. The results are clear. There is a direct relationship between transparency, the rule of law, and economic development. And that is why we consider it appropriate to bring these discussions to the Permanent Council. Mr. Chairman, Guatemala recognizes the importance of international cooperation. We truly appreciate the OAS's work through the mission of and the EOMs, the follow-up mechanisms, and the implementation of the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption, MESIC, and the guides on transparency, digital governance, and public work. This increases trust in the public and private sectors of the citizenry. We reaffirm finally that strengthening the rule of law, good governance, and active participation of the private sector are critical pillars to consolidate solid democracy, to promote more competitive economies, and to build more fair societies in our region. In this context, then, my country reaffirms its commitment to fruitfully contribute both within the framework of the voluntary group for the follow-up of the Inter-American Democratic Charter and other spaces in this organization. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Guatemala, Peru has the floor. Mr. Chairman, We would like to thank Canada for including this item on the agenda of this meeting. Particularly, we thank you for having included the panelists and a distinguished Peruvian at that. In a free society, social protagonism naturally moves towards the private sector because that's the one that can assign the scarce resources that society has with greater care and greater commitment. The state makes it possible for market processes be efficient, ensuring the rights of property and equality before the law. Now then, for the private sector and the state to work together, what is needed is or are political parties. Political parties are, as Isabel Sanchez said, a distinguished essayist, the gap between the society and the state. Without political parties, democratic processes cannot be held up over time. Regulation of financing campaigns should not undermine the conflict of values that is in the mix. These contributions are exercises of the right to free expression and for those who wish to opine. All contributions have to be recorded, but this might not abide by the law because we cannot clearly see who or what works together, but regulation of financing in politics can have undesirable consequences. To encourage that this can only be taken on because they have big fortunes is not the way. No, regulation of financing in politics should not encourage democracies to become plutocracies. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Peru. I would like to invite St. Kitts and Nevis to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Secretariat, all delegates and colleagues. My delegation would like to thank the delegation of Canada for including this item on today's agenda. We would also like to thank the presenters for their enlightening contributions. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis supports MESISIC because we believe that respect for the rule of law must begin at the top. This is why we support MESISIC. In this regard, legislation has been enacted to ensure that our leaders are held accountable and are therefore deterred from illicit activities in high office. An example of this is the passing of the Integrity in Public Life Amendment Act of 2023. This act mandates that the holders of high offices must declare their assets by April 30 of every year. In this way, unexplained enrichment can be investigated and addressed according to relevant laws. For example, the Proceeds of Crime and Asset Recovery Act of 2020 provides for the forfeiture or confiscation of proceeds of crime. The Act provides for confiscation of tainted property and gives the court the authority to grant unexplained wealth orders. An unexplained wealth order may be granted against a politically exposed person where there are reasonable grounds for suspecting that that person's known sources of lawfully obtained income would have been insufficient to enable him or her to obtain the property. To strengthen the functionality of these bits of legislation, the Whistleblowers Act of 2023 came into force in December of that year. A whistleblower is defined as any public officer who personally is aware of corrupt conduct or improper conduct and who intends to make or actually makes a disclosure of such conduct to a disclosure receiving authority. The disclosure receiving authorities are identified as the chairpersons of Integrity Commission, Special Prosecutor, Director of Public Prosecutions, Ombudsman, Chief Medical Officer, or any other person that the minister may prescribe. The Act also allows for anonymous disclosures. These, Chair and colleagues, along with the Justice Interference Prevention Act of 2024, serve to strengthen the rule of law in St. Kitts and Nevis. This law, better known as the Witness Protection Law, makes it an offense to intimidate, harass, or even attempt to bribe witnesses to criminal activity. May it please you, Chair.
Thank you, St. Kitts and Nevis. If there are no further requests for the floor, I would like to thank the panelists for their participation and presentations, as well as thanking the delegations for their thoughtful and informative comments and observations, which the Council has duly noted. The Chair suggests inviting the OAS voluntary group for the follow-up on the Inter-American Democratic Charter to continuing fostering discussions among member states on this and other relevant issues. Indeed, the Chair encourages the voluntary group to continue discussing the role of the private sector and what it can do in terms of combating illicit financing of electoral campaigns, as well as other important contributions it can make to strengthening our democracies. If there are no objections, it is so agreed. We now proceed to the election of the chairperson of the Committee on Juridical and Political Affairs in accordance with Article 28 of the Rules of Procedure. We would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank Ambassador Claudia Escobar, Permanent Representative of Guatemala, for her leadership and dedicated work throughout the tenure of her chairship over the past year of this very important committee. The chair elected today shall hold office for a term of 1 year as stipulated in Article 29A of the Rules of Procedure. In this regard, the candidacy of Ambassador Edison Lanza, Permanent Representative of Uruguay, has been submitted. The nomination was presented by the delegation of Uruguay as reflected in document CP/INF.10656/25. I offer the floor to delegations. Mexico, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The delegation of Mexico is honored to present the candidacy of Ambassador Edison Lanza Robaso, Permanent Representative of Uruguay, to chair the CAJP, given his merits and deep knowledge of the inter-American system. We are absolutely sure that Ambassador Lanza will carry out this chairmanship based on the best practices of multilateralism, such as opening up dialogue, the quest for consensus, and open and transparent negotiations. As we have heard this morning, Ambassador Lanza has an academic solid career and a professional career that ensures efficiency and a necessary institutional approach so that the Committee on Juridical and Political Affairs fulfills its objectives, particularly anything that has to do with the broad-reaching negotiation process that is carried out in this committee that includes 3 of the 4 thematic pillars of the OAS: legal affairs, political affairs, and other issues that have to do with human rights. And anything that asks for the support, we ask delegates to support this candidacy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to echo the comments made by the delegation of Mexico and express the full-fledged support of my delegation to the nomination and candidacy of Ambassador Edison Lanza Robato to chair the Committee on Juridical and Political Affairs. We absolutely believe that knowing his vocation of service and his time-worn professional career, as we've heard today in this permanent council, Ambassador Lanza will guide the work of the CIJP with an openness for dialogue, underscoring the role of this committee as a main area to strengthen the principles that undergird and support this organization. Thank you very much.
Trinidad and Tobago, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. My delegation is honored to request that the election of Ambassador Edison Lanza Robato of Uruguay as chair of the CAJP take place by acclamation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trinidad and Tobago. I hereby extend my sincere congratulations to Ambassador Lanza on his election as chair of the Committee on Juridical and Political Affairs of the Permanent Council. We have full confidence in your rich and deep experience and in your commitment to work conclusively and collaboratively with member states to strengthen political dialogue, promote and protect human rights, and support democracy and the rule of law in the region. Ambassador Lanza, I'd like to invite you to take the floor if you'd like.
Well, thank you, Chair, Secretary General, representatives, distinguished delegates. Especially, I'd like to thank the Ambassador of Mexico for having introduced, having the honor of Mexico introduce the nomination. Costa Rica, a country that we share so much with, for seconding that nomination, and Trinidad and Tobago for the request for a vote by acclamation. I'm very appreciative of all of the support from the Caribbean as well. I would also like to commend Ambassador Escobar for having undertaken that chair of CAJP, and I will rely on your support for making sure that I am fully engaged as much as possible. I'm actually overwhelmed with the confidence that has been deposited in me. But I think with the mission team who are joining me here, I think we will be able to move forward successfully. It's an honor for me to assume the chair of the Committee on Juridical and Political Affairs of the organization. From its origins, this has been an essential space and forum to support the institutional principles protecting human rights, democracy, as well as supporting the legal systems. So Uruguay has agreed to present my candidacy, convinced of the regional importance of the organization and the inter-American system as a whole, and that these principles and values, as well as the OAS legal structure that supports many of our actions and opinions in these sensitive areas, is essential. I would also like to thank the support by the members. Chair, promoting and protecting human rights constitutes fundamental pillars of Uruguay's foreign policy. I'd like to once again reiterate our commitment with the human rights, inter-American human rights systems, working with the Commission and the Inter-American Court. Countries actively communicate to incorporate human rights standards in our legislation and our legal practices, which in turn is translated into improved legislative practices, improved law enforcement and administrative measures for the entire hemisphere. We also consider it important to continue to work as a level of the hemisphere on some of these core issues that include the defense, promotion of freedom of expressions, equal gender equality, the support of children's rights, the LGBT rights, eliminating structural discrimination that still has an impact on the indigenous and Afro-descendant communities. We also want to reiterate our efforts against impunity, especially in this cases involving a widespread human rights violations, so that we never again see dictatorships in our hemisphere. The increased discussions of stigmatization and hate against those more vulnerable and those who defend or promote human rights, those in journalism, that underpin democracy. These things need to sound alarm bells for our member states. We cannot have the luxury of remaining immobile. We know that through institutional tensions and issues, questioning fundamental democratic principles, since Uruguay returned to democratic institutions 40 years ago, many of our countries have consolidated democratic institutions, but in other cases, we know we've seen an undermining of democratic principles until suppressing them once again in the hemisphere, we're seeing people who have been detained and imprisoned for expressing their political beliefs. The OAS Charter is an amazing instrument, but it also needs to be an instrument for reflection, because disruptions in the constitutional order did not take place from one day to the next. We see strengthening of aimed at concentrating power, eliminating the independence of the rules and the branches of government, and eliminating justice. So in that reality, the organization plays a key role to play in promoting democracy and to support electoral processes that are transparent, as well as oversight on freedoms and balance of power. So I would just like to say that I will lead CAGP with aware of the importance of the tasks assigned, and with the full conviction that dialogue will help us overcome differences that may arise as we achieve necessary consensus building. Thank you, Ambassador Lanza.
You are showing great ambition to make a strong contribution on the part of your government and yourself to the Inter-American system and to this council, and we wish you every success in doing so. Now we pass to the next agenda item, which is the consideration of the draft resolution entitled Authorization of Use of Resources from the Indirect Cost Recovery Reserve Subfund to finance the replacement of the conference system in the Simon Bolivar room, this room. This draft was transmitted to by the Vice Chair of the Committee on Administrative and Budgetary Affairs, CAP, pursuant to note CP/INF 10657/25. It is contained in document CP Cap-4121/25. I yield the floor now to Ambassador Solano, President and Permanent Representative of Costa Rica and Chair of the CAP.
Thank you, Chair. Allow me to refer to the proposed resolution for the authorization to use resources from the Indirect Cost Recovery Reserve Subfund to finance the replacement of the conference system in the Simon Bolivar room. This is a topic that is considered necessary as a result of the urgency to need to address the deterioration and the obsolescence of the current system, ensuring safety of individuals, protection of the premises, and the functionality of our meetings in a modern, efficient, and secure format. The resolution submitted for consideration today not only addresses the immediate need to replace a system that no longer meets required standards, but also incorporates very important safeguards. These safeguards ensure that the procurement process will be carried out through open and competitive bidding, that transparency in the use of resources will be upheld, that monthly reports will be presented to the Committee on Administrative and Budgetary Affairs, CAP, together with a final report detailing the benefits achieved, including savings associated with virtual interpretation. In this way, we respond to a concrete need, also establishing a mechanism that will serve as a precedent so that going forward, this type of investment is integrated into the ordinary system of maintenance for the equipment and physical facilities of this organization. All this is taking place at a key moment ahead of the Special General Assembly of October 15th, and as part of the framework for the negotiations on the program budget. For this reason, we particularly value that the Assistant Secretary General, Ambassador Laura Hill, has brought this matter to the attention of the member states. And finally, I wish to express my gratitude to all the delegations for the constructive spirit with which we have approached this matter on this very key issue. We are also to thank the delegates from CAP. As chair of the CAP, we are going to closely follow the implementation of this project and accompany it in fulfillment of our mandate to safeguard the responsible and efficient use of the organization's resources. Having said that, I'd also kindly like to request the support and express my appreciation with the conference's services. We know that you have taken good care of resources, public and institutional resources that need to be maintained with with the support and care. I'd like to thank the Assistant Secretary General for bringing this to our attention. So with, I ask that with this request the support of the member states so that the present resolution may be adopted by acclamation. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Solano. Maybe this is a little out of place since this was approved by acclamation. But those of us who attended the last meeting of the CAP saw how now we are now used to the leadership of the representative from Costa Rica, and mentioned at a meeting that helped us to better understand that we were going to have a very quick consensus. Each working group, each regional group met, and I'm sure that helped to facilitate the process launched by the Ambassador of Costa Rica. But we also need to thank the Assistant Secretary General, because in such a short amount of time, after having assumed her position, she's given us the possibility to move quickly and avoid any kind of unfortunate situations that might have occurred or could occur. We're never exempt from that. But the scenario that we're not able to negotiate, discuss, achieve consensus, vote without those communications resources, we would be taking a step back. I'd like to again recognize the leadership of the Ambassador of Costa Rica, who has also helped pave the way for this. I just wanted to say that earlier. Thank you.
Argentina.
Thank you, Argentina.
Resolution entitled Authorization to Use Resources from the Indirect Cost Recovery Reserve Subfund to Finance the Replacement of the Conference System in the Simon Bolivar Room is hereby approved. I would like to now give the Assistant Secretary General a chance to make a few comments.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to just say thank you. I thank the member states for having very quickly decided to proceed with supporting the proposal. I'd like to thank Ambassador Solano for allowing my office for giving the opportunity to explain the situation with the Department of Conferences. I'd like to thank once again to the Department of Conferences, and as the Ambassador from Argentina already mentioned, Fernando Solano is our superhero. And in particular, I also wanted to mention that the office that I lead is highly satisfied, very pleased that this is done through open and competitive bidding. Despite the urgency, we believe that we have to move forward so that we can avoid the exceptions. And I believe that having seen that the member states decided to select the path of the bidding process, this gives us and yourselves guarantees, and hopefully that will be the path that we will follow over the next 5 years without any surprises along the way. So once again, thank you very much.
General, and if you agree, I would propose we give a round of applause to our great conference services team who've been working through this. Without them, the system would have broken long ago, so we are very grateful. The next item on the agenda is consideration of the council's meeting minutes. I would like to consult delegations on the approval of the minutes of the following permanent council meetings, which are in the referent documents. They are special meeting of April 21st, 2022, Acta 2374. The special meeting of April 27th, 2022, Acta 2375. The regular meeting of May 18, 2022, Acta 2378. The regular meeting of June 15, 2022, Acta 2379. The special meeting of July 14, 2025, Acta 2557. And the regular meeting of July 23rd, 2025, Acta 2558. If there are any comments, proposals, then I propose that these be approved. Approved. Before we move on, I would like to take a moment to commend the Assistant Secretary General and her team for their very proactive efforts to bring these minutes to the Council and bring these minutes up to date. This work is enhancing the efficiency and transparency of the Council's procedures, and we commend their continued commitment to advancing these efforts. I think that some of this has slipped through the cracks over the last little while, and the Assistant Secretary General and her team have identified this and immediately leapt to action in a very short period of time, and that is to be commended. And in that sense, I would like to give the floor again to the Assistant Secretary General for a few words.
Embajador,
Excellencies, ambassadors, today we have approved 6 minutes, and that is again within the commitments of the Office of the ASG to address the cumulative backlog of the Permanent Council's documents. I'd like to just share a story with you. Just give me 5 minutes of your time and patience, and then we will finish this session. But let me just share this story. More than 1 decade ago, I, professor and columnist, I was looking for some minutes, and I expressed publicly my displeasure because the minutes from January were being published in September. And when I was elected, this information came out publicly, and I was asked questions about it. So life takes many turns, because that angry professor who couldn't find the minutes of the Permanent Council, as a result of that, now I am given the responsibility to rectify this problem. Let me just say a couple of things that I think are important that need to be understood clearly. This setback is not an administrative issue, and the minutes are not a formality. The minutes are the cornerstone of transparency and accountability in organizations such as this. They provide a clear record of what was discussed, what was determined and decided, and why. They safeguard the institutional memory, and they guarantee continuity. And even more important, it allows member states and our public to see that the work is done with rigor, transparency, and responsibility. And with the minutes, the same happens as with justice. Justice delayed is not justice at all. Well, transparency delayed is not transparency. Of the 6 minutes that were approved today, 2 relate to recent sessions of this council. So we will do everything possible, everything within our power, to maintain that pace. In other words, we're not going to allow any more backlogs or delays. We will come up with the minutes of the meetings on a more timely basis, and we will begin to reduce that backlog that we have inherited. To do that, we need help. I asked CAP, I will ask CAP to hold a meeting to present a plan. But we sat down with the team working on the minutes, how we can cut and save some time with each step. One thing that we have detected is that if you don't provide those interventions, if you do it, then it's going to permit the transcriptions to be done more quickly. These interventions will only be used as references because, as we know, ambassadors, sometimes they'll make changes as they go along and as they read their interventions. So don't worry. Everything will be verified, and we'll check it with the recordings. But again, I want to thank sincerely all of the missions that are helping us. And for those who haven't done it, please don't be surprised if people from our team, from the Department of Conferences, they're asking for these interventions. These texts will not be distributed. They will not be used for any other purpose, only to accelerate the process in preparing the minutes. So I'd like to thank you very much, all your support and commitment. And I'm fully convinced that between yourselves and ourselves, we will overcome this challenge and thus achieve our goal. In other words, to get up to date, as it always should have been, in publishing the minutes. And that way we can contribute to show that the OAS doesn't just speak, but we also show through our example. We practice transparency. We don't just talk about it.
Your team for those ongoing important efforts. We now proceed to the last item, other business. Before opening the floor to delegations wishing to share their informational matters, I would like to inform members of an update to the implementation of the rules for preparing permanent councils. According to the rules, the deadline for distributing the proposed permanent council agenda and relative documents is 3 business days, 3 full business days in advance of a regular meeting. These meetings usually take place on a Wednesday. Therefore, Friday would be the first business day, Monday would be the second, and Tuesday would be the third business day prior to the regular meeting on Wednesday. However, over time, we have noted that the de facto practice has been to accept changes to proposed and agenda items proposals up to and including Friday, the end of the day, which is the first business day that should be counted towards preparation for the permanent council. This has resulted in the Secretariat only being able to circulate required materials very late in the day Friday and even into the evening after working hours. Such timing does not really respect the established rule, and it is very impractical for delegations seeking to consult capitals and prepare for the participation of these important meetings. For the Chair and Secretariat to fully respect the rules, we propose that delegations submit their PC-related requests by the end of the business day on Thursday preceding a permanent council meeting. That is assuming the permanent council is on a Wednesday. This will help ensure that all requests are complete and processed in a timely manner and shared with member states Friday morning to better allow them to begin their preparations 3 full business days prior to the PC. It will also allow the Secretariat to consolidate, translate, and circulate all documents within the established frameworks and provide, of course, timely access to information for all member states and avoid additional workload and related overtime. And so it would also contribute to cost efficiencies of the running of the PC. This proposal does not constitute an amendment to the rules, but rather the simple, full respecting of the agreed timelines. This update and the approach will be shared with all delegations in writing as a practical measure intended to serve the collective interest. The Chair looks forward to the cooperation of all the delegations and the Secretariat in implementing the practical measures that this represents, which is intended, of course, for the benefit of all. Having said that, I now offer the floor to any delegations wishing to present any matters of purely informational nature pursuant to Article 45 of the Rules of Procedure. Chile, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to report that the Latin American Council on Garcia and the General Secretariat through the Universalization of Civil Identity, CUICA, in the Americas will be carrying out a campaign entitled The Week of Civil Registry in the Americas, a region without invisible people. This campaign will take place between September 1st and 16th. That will look at civil registry in areas that are remote and of hard access, promoting that children will be registered right after birth and ensure thus the right to their identity and the protection of their rights overall. Chile, in its capacity as chair of Clarcia, we invite all of us, all of you, to join. Thank you, Chair. As is already known, on August 17th, the plurinational state of Bolivia held elections, and now there's going to be a runoff election that will take place for the first time in Bolivia. That will be October 19th of this year. Among the two candidates, Rodrigo Pastrera of the Christian Democratic Party and Jorge Quiroga of the Free Alliance are the two runners in the runoffs. And we reassert the profoundly democratic call and commitment of the Bolivian people. There was despite a series of threats against the elections process, but it was shown that the spirit in defending democracy supersedes everything else in Bolivia. So we know that there's been election oversight with the European organization as well as with the OAS in elections monitoring. Chair, I also wanted to especially recognize Fernando Cristo, the head of the elections observer mission of the OAS in Bolivia, and the Secretariat for Strengthening Democracy, Ambassador Clajevic from Chile, who everyone knows, and of course all of the working groups. We also recognize and we'd like to give special thanks to Secretary General Albert Ramdin and Ambassador and Laura Gil for their support in the elections process. Compared to what happened in the past, the efforts, the attitude, and the preliminary report published shows objectiveness, impartiality, and great technical expertise. This is how elections observation missions should operate. Go beyond subjective value judgments that were so harmful in the past. Thank you, Chair.
Congratulations to the people of Bolivia for this important democratic exercise. Seeing no further requests for the floor, I would then suggest that we have no further business and would propose adjourning this session. Seeing no objections, adjourned. How are you? That's great.